Hey guys! Alright, so I was excited. This feather is going to turn out so cute. Alright, so if you are watching this, it means that you ordered the art kit, the feather art kit. So the supplies included should be your paint, which will look like this on the paper inside. You should also have a paper palette. It's the smooth paper. You're going to use the smooth side to mix colors on, because I know not everybody has a white plate lying around. I also include the brush or brushes needed for this kit, the page with the outline of the feather. So just in case sketching is not your thing, at least it's on there. And then you'll have an extra sheet of watercolor paper just to practice on if you need to. And then there should be a sheet with basics to watercolor. And then obviously if you're watching this, you already found the link to the tutorial. So let's see. Now I'm gonna decide on the colors. Oh, and you're also gonna need, sorry guys, I have bronchitis, so excuse me. You're gonna need a paper towel, and then you're gonna need a jar, a glass, or a vase of water to clean your brush. And I always just like to get mine wet to start with. So some of the colors I have pulled for this so far are mauve and a magenta rose. And if I need any other colors, I'll add that on there. And then one other item you can use is if you have like a white gel pen lying around, you might pull that out. So let's see. Yeah, I may use this. So you can do this step at the end if you want to, you don't have to. Or you can use like a paint pen. Let me see if I can grab one really quick. I know where my stuff is. Oh, Alright. Still trying to figure out where everything is in the new studio. Okay, so I also have these acrylic markers. If you have any acrylic markers, you could also use that instead of a white gel pen. But I'm gonna pull out the white one, so we might use that as well. But like I said, this step, at the very end with a gel pen or a paint marker, you don't have to do. That's totally optional. All right, so I think we should get started. So the first step is going to be wet on wet. Sorry guys. So if you read the basics to watercolor, you might be able to understand that. So what you're going to do is you're basically going to wet just the area that we are painting. So you're going to paint basically inside the lines with just clean water. Because what that's going to do is when you go to add some watercolor pigment, it will stay where the paper is wet. So as long as you're in the lines of the sketch with the water, that's where the water will remain and the color when we add it. And you can be generous because it will dry up fast. The paper will absorb the water fairly quickly. And then I'm gonna line this and the stem. Not quite sure if that's what that's called on a feather. Is that the stem? Well, it is now. Hard to see what I'm doing on the top of that. Just trying to make sure I stay in the sketch lines here. Oh, and another thing, you can also tape your edges down with some masking tape if you want, if you're worried about the paper buckling. Should have explained that before we started, but that's okay. And if you get outside the lines, you can just wipe it up with your finger or a paper towel. Watercolor is actually pretty forgiving. No, it doesn't seem like it, but it is. Okay, I think I got everything saturated that I want to. And just to kind of add some more water back in the areas that you've added water, you can just kind of tap along it, just in case it's dried up or anything. Okay, so I'm gonna take, I think we're gonna start with just a tiny bit of the magenta rose. Hopefully you can see that. Is that in view? Okay. So I'm just gonna take a little bit of that magenta rose, and the more water you add, the lighter the color will be. The less water you add to the paint, the darker it will be. So we want it to be fairly light, like that, just to start with, and we're just gonna kind of go around inside the feather, just to start getting some color on there to start with. Hopefully you can see how light that is. So with watercolor, you work light to dark, which means you want your lightest, most faded colors to be painted first. So that's still a little dark. I'm gonna keep adding a little bit. There we go. So I'm kind of darkening this up just a little bit, so that way it might be easier to see on camera. So just by touching it, you can see how it's just spreads, the color just spreads on there. You can just dab it if you want to, but it stays where we applied the water, so you don't have to worry about it like going outside the lines. Oh, and see down here, it already tried to dry on me. I think I might tape this down because it is starting to buckle. So I just don't want the paint itself to, like by it buckling, I don't want it to start pooling up in specific areas. So we'll just tape it down. Okay, so yeah, you don't have to tape it down, it'll be fine, but if you have some masking tape lying around or painter's tape, it's always handy. And normally I would do all the sides, but this is good enough for now. Okay, so I'm just gonna kind of go in and make sure I got all the edges here. There we go. Drop some more pigment in there. Okay. So when we work wet on wet, you kind of want to let this dry a little bit in between the layer. Not too much, because I still want it to be wet, but not like super, super wet. So I'll give it just like a minute, because we're going to go in with a darker version of this magenta rose to add a little bit, like each layer you're adding more and more dimension and depth to your piece. So let's see, it's starting to dry up. I think I need to spread that a little bit closer. And if you go outside the lines, it's fine. You can totally just take a paper towel to the edge of it. Or you can also vacuum up the color. So just as an example, if you had gotten some like outside the lines, you can clean your brush really good, dry it off the best you can, and then by touching it, it will soak it up. So for an example, I'll touch this spot. Not that you could really see it, but it soaks up the color. So vacuuming up is super easy, especially if you do it, you know, fairly quickly. If you see you made a mistake or some color got outside the line. All right, so now I'm gonna take a little bit more of that pigment. And that is still pretty dark. So we'll add a little bit more water, but you see how it's darker and like on here than it is right there. So I'm gonna just add a little bit more water because you only wanna darken it up a little bit at a time. You don't wanna move up your values way too quickly with watercolor. So now I'm gonna kind of work on the stem a little bit. But as you can see, it's still pretty wet, so it kind of spreads. All right, all the way up the stem. And I like how it's coming out in the feather right here. That is pretty. All right, so now I'm just gonna kind of make a imaginary line right here with some of the pigment. And it will spread, and that's okay. It's just kind of a guide to where we're going to be darkening up here shortly. And we're going to do another one up this way. One right here. Another one right here. Another one right there. And it might be kind of hard to see on camera, but we're just kind of making some of those lines that you see on the feathers. But we got to go slowly with this process as far as values. Now the top of the feather is usually the darkest area, so we can go ahead and just apply that in this V shape like this. So hopefully that's showing up. So kind of letting this dry a little bit more because we're going to go in and darken even more what we just darkened, if that makes sense. And if you have a heat gun lying around, this will help speed up the process a little bit, but you don't want to hold it too close because it could fan out the water. Or it could move the lines that we've already placed with that little bit of darker color. So most of the time it's best not to use a heat gun and just let each layer kind of dry on its own. But sometimes I'll do that for like video purposes. I'll just take a heat gun to it. And it's not exactly the warmest out here in my studio. I have one like wall heater. So stuff takes a little bit longer for me to dry. Out in the studio versus in the house, but that's okay. Okay, so now that it's kind of drying, now it's a little more glossy and not like damp in some of these areas. So now we can go back in with that magenta, kind of darken it up just a little bit in value. And then I'm just gonna kind of go over this stem, like the center. And you can just dab it on there if you want to, or you can do a straight line with the tip of your brush. And if you feel like you have too much water, you can always dab it on the paper towel. But I'm just trying to darken it up a little at a time. And then work on some of these lines again. So you guys can kind of see how it's darkening up. here. One right here. It almost gives me like the tie-dye vibes. And then up here on that V again, just kind of darken that V up here at the top. I feel like the top right here is actually pretty dry, so I could add like some darker color to it. And it looks like I kind of got it outside the line right there. But we can always go in and try to vacuum that up before it dries. There we go. Just kind of get some of that color back in there. Okay. Now I'm just gonna kind of darken up the lines even more. You just got to be patient with yourself and with watercolor because it's I don't know. I'd say it's like a therapeutic medium because it just takes time to work with it. See, I'm just kind of darkening it up as I go. And it's just a little at a time. Let's see if we can kind of get that stem a little darker here. Okay. All right, it's looking good. So I think I might start introducing some of the mauve into the mix here. So when we're introducing a new color and it's darker, we're gonna kind of let this dry for the most part. So it will have to just, like some of these areas are already a little more drier than I want for this next step. Like you want it dry, but not like bone dry. Because we're going to be doing some more of the fine detail with the darker colors. But beware, if you mix the water into the parts that are wet, it will spread that color and kind of like reactivate it in a way. Not like totally, but it will move that darker pigment around. Okay, so I kind of re-wetted those a little bit. So now I'm gonna add some of the mauve into the pink. We're not gonna be using straight mauve just yet. I'm just kind of changing that magenta. And then I'm gonna kind of go over that V. A little darker. There we go. So a little bit of the value at a time. We're just going to kind of put that up here And you don't have to cover, like, try not to cover this very tip up here. The V and then like the left side. We'll kind of leave that open so that way it still shows that magenta. So now I'm gonna darken it up a little more with the mauve, just to kind of redefine some of these like feather pieces. A little more. Go ahead and take it to the edge. I'm going to add some more to that V up here, a little more to the left side, and the lower part of the right side. And then do another one. And this one. This one. There we go. So you're starting to see more definition. Ah, that was way too much magenta. Holy moly. Oops. Lighten that up some more. We don't want it to be too dark. Alright, so now I'm going to go in with the very tip of it and just kind of line some of these lower feathers that kind of poke out here. And then I'm going to work on the stem. And you can kind of leave this left side right here a little lighter, just on the end. I'm just kind of dabbing the center here. Oh my gosh, it's starting to look so good. And then we're gonna trace the outside of this one and kind of bring it down. There we go. It's looking nice. And then maybe some of this. We're gonna bring that down. And this side. Here. That's exactly why I re-wetted that one a little bit. Okay. And we're just kind of sticking to the bottom edge here of each of these separated feathers. There we go. And just kind of darkening up a little bit right there. See how it's definitely getting more dimension, more shape to it. I love how this is turning out. So pretty. Do just the stem and go up all the way. And then kind of let this dry again because we want to darken it up now with more mauve than pink, or more than the magenta. So I might get the heat gun just so I can speed up the process if I have a spot to plug it in. I did not think that all the way through. Oh, that's funny. Let's see, can I fit that in there? Nope. My light ring is blocking it. And I don't have an extension cord. Lame. Alright, well I guess we'll just be patient, and patience is not my strong suit. That's why I'm surprised I enjoy watercolor, but it is what it is. Alright, just trying to let that dry up some, so that way we can go in with like a darker mauve. But I can go ahead and get that started to mix up real quick. Let's see, I might use this clean page. So it's definitely a lot darker. And then just a touch of the magenta. Okay. So it's slowly but surely getting darker and drying. There we go. That should be good. All right, so now I'm going to kind of go over the lines that I already did here with this darker mauve. And I'm just going to try to stick to the stem for now. So the drier you let it get, the more defined, and you'll get more defined lines. If that makes any sense at all. It will though. Because when it's still wet, it bleeds in with other colors like it is doing right now. So you can't exactly get sharp defined lines until it's actually dry. But trying to go back in a little bit and just make it darker. Just where we did the last little bit. Less wet right there. So see how you can get more of a defined line and it doesn't feather and bleed out as much the drier it gets. So this spot is fairly dry. Oh, I love how the colors are mixing right here. You can really see the magenta versus the mauve. That is really pretty. I like it. Kind of go over these ones a little bit. And I think I'm going to darken up just a little bit down here, a little bit more. Let that rest. I should find an extension cord because I really want to use a heat gun to show you guys how to get those more defined lines. But I think I will kind of darken up the top here. Oops. A little bit more. In that V area, kind of while it's still wet. And feather it upward. Just a little bit up there. And drag that dark purple down the center. be going over some of those. I'm working on making it darker. Pretty. A little at a time. It just gets darker and darker. I love it. There we go. Kind of add some random little lines in there. That's looking really good. Okay. So let me see if I can find an extension cord really quick. Thought I had things like but my husband might have taken it. Let's see. Might have found one. Let's see if this one will work. For the plug. And honestly, it doesn't take too long to dry, but for the video, I'm just gonna heat it up here. See if that is, oh yeah, that's dry. Okay, like I said, it doesn't take too long. Okay, so this is where we're gonna take the like darkest purple or mauve, and I think I might be adding, let's see, maybe use those two colors. I could add black to this to make it darker. I could even use a blue to darken it up, but I'm going to see which version I like best. So we'll mix some of the mauve real quick, because this only gets to a certain level. So let's take some of this black just to see if we can darken it up to the color I'm wanting. Definitely more rich mauve. Let's see what mixing it with this blue does. Let's see if we can make it a more, ooh, yeah, it's definitely still more of a purpley, like a brighter purple versus the dark color that I'm looking for. So let's just add more black to this one, to the mauve. Because I got a lot of water on my brush, it's kind of making it lighter. There we go. That is nice. Okay, so I will make sure and add the black to the list for this specific one. That way I make sure and add all the colors that you're gonna need. Okay. So I'm gonna kind of dab off the water that I can. Now with this step, we're gonna be using the very, very, very tip of the brush to get more of the fine detail lines. So I'm just gonna move in small strokes to make sure I'm getting just the right kind of line. And then up here, we're gonna kind of make some feathers up toward the top very lightly. Got it on the outside. See if we can vacuum that up really quick. Hopefully it's not too late. There we go. And then of course I still had some excess water on my brush, so that didn't help. There we go. Clean it up a little bit. Yeah, this purple is significantly darker. So we're just gonna kind of fan upwards. Give the more of the individual feathered lines. Forgot I made this stem a little bit thicker, so there we go. And it goes thinner up toward the top. Touching the paper a little bit. Yeah, that looks really cool. Okay, then we're just gonna kind of lightly feather in here with just the tip of the brush to give those individual lines. They go up, they kind of go up in this motion. So I want to make sure we're going with the direction, or that we're painting in the direction that it's supposed to go. There we go. And then looks like I need to mix some more on here because I didn't quite get enough. There we go. And then if I put too much water, it won't work quite the way we want it to. So just trying to fan those lines up and then kind of do some along the edge here. And sometimes it can be kind of difficult to use just like the tip of the brush, but just be patient with yourself. You'll get the hang of it. And then dark toward the bottom. Keep remembering to feather upward. And we will be doing even darker, so just remember, you don't want it to be the darkest. And just the top on that, and then just some lines down here. And the less water you have on your brush right now will benefit greatly. Just kind of keep feathering up. But if it's starting to get too dry, you can always add just a dab of water. You can kind of make, like this one right here, I kind of did like a swoop down. Hopefully you guys could see that. Just kind of make it a little sparse down at the bottom here. Add just a touch of water, and then we can kind of go in and make some fine line individual lines down here. They do have some little stragglers. I like that. That looks really good. Okay, so now we're gonna want to go in with the darkest version that we can. So, I wonder if, I know if I add red, but I don't know if I have alizarin crimson and watercolor, that would really deepen this up. I'll try this red. What is this? Oh, this is rose. That might not be the right kind of red, but we'll give it a shot. See if that will change it up here, and I'll mix that in with the black and the mauve. Oof, that is nice and rich. Okay, so I'm gonna add that rose on there too, because that really gave it something else, and I like it. Oh yeah, that's really nice. So you really want this part to be the darkest of the dark, because this will be the very last of the detail. Yeah, that's significantly darker. Loving it. And you don't want a lot of water on this part either, so it's just wet enough that I'm able to mix the color up, but you don't want it to be like dripping or anything like that. So I'm just gonna go in with just some fine details just to give it a little bit more depth, and then darken the stem up, of course. That way it's super defined. And then I'm gonna just kind of go over the very edge of that and kind of trace it, if you will. Looking good. Okay, So I left that little spot inside the stem a little lighter. And I'm only gonna do some of these on the bottom as far as some of the lines. But we want this to be, you don't want to cover up completely the last purple that we did. You just want to kind of give it more, you're giving it more depth. And that squiggly line I did right there, I'm going to kind of darken that up. I'm going to go along this edge here. Make sure you're still feathering upward with your brush. Looking good. Alright, and then kind of want to do up here and right here. I need just a touch more water because this is starting to dry. Dab it off just to make sure I don't have too much pigment. Looks like I'm losing the darkness here, so I might add a little bit more color to it. A little bit more of that rose. There we go. And light touches because you're only wanting to use the end of it. Let's see. It's turning out really nice. I'm really liking it. I'm gonna just kind of brush some on the edges there. This stem, re-darken in some areas because it looks like it moved. That looks really, really nice. I feel like down here should be darker along the base next to the stem. Some areas you can kind of darken up that are closest to the stem down here on the bottom. And then I think just to add a little bit more in between some of these, I'm actually going to lighten this up. So just add more water to make it not so dark. See, each bead gets lighter. Okay, I'm going to dab it off. Make sure I don't have too much excess water. But I see water and a fuzzy. So just to kind of add a little bit more back into it right up here. And then add some lines right here. I might have lightened it up a little too much, but kind of just want to darken these areas a little bit. Along here. And then maybe right here. looking a little light for what I was trying to do. And then maybe along the edge right here. There we go. Yeah, it definitely looked like it was missing a little bit more depth to it. Carry that up into that lighter area. That's pretty. And then I might do this spot too because it is very, very light. And the bottom is usually darker, so. There. I still think I need a little bit more feathering in here. So I'll take maybe this bead and kind of just try to, maybe a little darker. Try to give it a little bit more lines, a little bit darker. There we go. That way it doesn't look too bare or too bright. That is beautiful. Okay, so there is the feather. Now, if you have a white gel pen or you have an acrylic marker, once this is dry, I'll probably blow dry it real quick, but we can add some spots on there to give it some more character. Make sure it's still recording. Okay. I'm gonna move that because it might blow away. That turned out really, really nice. Should be dry. All right, so I'm gonna go in with this paint pen and just kind of add some little like circles. So sometimes they have like spots, you know? So they don't have to be perfect, just trying to give it a little something. It's not gonna show up super dark on here, but that's totally fine. I don't want it to be like too distracting, but I just want it to like give a little something else. There we go. Just some spots. What do you guys think? I cannot wait to see how yours turns out. Please, please, please make sure you tag me on Instagram at 208Amanda_Martinez. I would love to see how yours turns out. These are so much fun to do, and watercolor is so therapeutic, you guys. So therapeutic. So yeah, if you guys enjoyed this, please let me know in the comments, and I cannot wait to see you on the next one.